So happy to welcome Dr. David Schuler to the program today. Hi, Dave. It's good to see you.
Great to see you.
Really appreciate your time today. Dave is the new Executive Director of the American Association of School Administrators, commonly referred to as AASA. And Dave, you've been on the job now for how many weeks?
This is my third week.
Third week. So you've gotten everything already figured out.
That's right.
Well, we're very, very excited to talk with you about this new role and kind of your vision and just the excitement you have, I know, for leading this, premier national organization for school superintendents and school leaders. So we're really interested and excited to visit with you about that. But before we get started on that, would you mind just providing our listeners a little bit about your background and kind of your path to this new role?
Sure. Yeah. I started out as a teacher and a coach and then became an athletic director and a high school principal. And then I've been a superintendent for the last 22 years in 3 different districts in 2 states. Had the opportunity to serve in a small rural farming community that was growing in enrollment, and I got to build a school. Then I went to a sprawling geographical district in the center of the state of Wisconsin that was losing enrollment and got to close a school. And Karen, it's a lot more fun to build a school than to close a school, I can tell you that. And then for the last 17 years, I've been in the northwest suburbs of Chicago in a stable district, very suburban with a really diverse demographics, which has been awesome. And I've loved all of that work. Through that time, I had the opportunity to be on the governing board and executive committee of AASA and serve as president. And I was honored to be named the National Superintendent of the Year in 2018, and just really love the work. I feel there are so few individuals in a school community that have the opportunity to transform an entire community than that of the school superintendent.
Yeah, well, I've known Dave for a while, so it's your career path has just been extraordinary. The work and the impact you've had, certainly in your districts, has been really impressive. But you've been engaged in much even broader work through your relationship with AASA and other things that you've done. You've inspired so many leaders across the country, even prior to this role, to thinking differently about the work that they're leading and the impact they could have as school system leaders. So one of the ways, so we're very excited that you are in this new role, and we really are just we're going to enjoy watching the impact that you're going to continue to have across the country. So one of the things that I know that I'm familiar with that you were very engaged in and really led as part of AASA was the Redefining Ready cohort. So I'd love for you to talk a little bit about that work and, how is that making you think, or how is it shaping the way you're thinking in some ways around the work of AASA moving forward?
Yeah, thanks, Karen. A number of years ago, I was getting really frustrated that we were allowing outside entities to determine how successful public schools were being. And I think that public schools have some amazing things going on. We're not perfect, but show me a perfect profession and we can continue that conversation, right? But there's some great things going on. And so I asked Dan Dominage, my predecessor, if we could do a meta-analysis on what it means to be college, career, and life ready. Like, what does the research actually say? And that's where we developed our Redefining Ready metrics. And it's been awesome because our perspective is our kids are more than a score. They're more than just a score they earn on a standardized test. And so we lived that in District 214, and other districts across the country have also embraced that work. We're seeing more and more states' accountability plans also include factors and metrics associated with Redefining Ready, which is just terrific. But what it did is it made us shift away from thinking solely a goal of every kid going to a 4-year institution and really creating personalized pathways of choice for every student. And I say all the time, I understand graduation rates matter, but we can't be judged on how many of our students graduate. We have to be judged on how successful they are after they graduate. And Karen, you and I know, technology is moving faster than ever before. And it's the slowest it will ever move in the rest of our lives, and so we have to prepare kids for a world we cannot yet imagine. And that can be a huge burden, or it can be viewed as an awesome opportunity. And that's how I love to embrace the work. And so, we started building out career pathways based on our industry need in our community. So we started with manufacturing and then went into healthcare. And over time, built out a really comprehensive program, including a law and equity pathway, a sustainability pathway, finance, governance. So every kid has an opportunity while they're with us to find out either what they do want to do or what they don't want to do. But what I wanted students to think about in their families is I didn't want them just taking a class and then another class and then a class. I wanted them to think about how their experience in their high school was going to lead them to something beyond, because our kids can't dream what they can't see. And so it's our opportunity as superintendents to plant new dreams in the minds of our students and their families. And I think if that's the approach you take, and that's the approach I'm hoping that we can scale kind of across the country, the future is incredibly bright for public education.
I so agree with that, and I really love the way you described all of that. I'm also finding that when we think about how we're equipping our young people for their futures, right, and really looking at the experiences they have in our pre-K to 12 career, that we have an opportunity to really inspire them and really excite them around learning. And I think the same holds true for our educators as well. I think the kind of work that you're describing is the kind of work that I think our teachers want to be involved in, the kind of education and experiences that our young people want, but the teachers want for themselves as well, the work that they want to lead. Do you want to comment on our educators in our pipeline, and how do we inspire more people to join the profession?
Yeah, Karen, I couldn't agree with you more. I think there's a misnomer sometimes that teachers and educators get into teaching because they love to teach. And I would argue they get into teaching because they love to learn. And during No Child Left Behind, a lot of the love for learning was stripped out of our work. And I think that personally, that's one of the biggest challenges to filling our teacher shortage, is putting the love back in learning for all of our stakeholders, especially our adults who are in the system. And, as we think about our work, we're at AASA and professional development for school districts, it really is about inspiring the love of learning in everybody. And I think we've done a good job in motivating and inspiring our kids. But I think something new in this next generation, we have to be more aspirational in our work. We have to get kids to dream beyond what they currently think they're capable of when they walk through our schoolhouse doors on day one, right? And I think if that's, again, the attitude that people take into the work, and I'll just give you a quick example. About 7 or 8 years ago now, I brought all of our keyboard teachers into a room, and I said, we're going to eliminate keyboarding. And that did not go over well, by the way. But I said, here's the deal. We're not going to do any reduction in force. And over the course of the next year, I want you to develop courses that students want to take versus are compelled to take. And out of that work came our app design, our small business, our website design class, our entrepreneurial classes. And the teachers love teaching those courses. And we had a teacher come in front of the school board one time and say, I have to tell you, I was so mad at Dave when he brought us in. And I thought I was doing really good work. I am the best educator now than I've ever been because he allowed us to dream, he allowed us to implement, and he didn't say no. And I think, if I could just erase one word from the lexicon of any educator, it would be just, please don't use the word no unless something's dangerous.
Right.
Don't say no. Encourage people. We had a teacher one time who did an Italian exchange to Italy, and she came back and she said, Dave, I'd like to create an international career partnership with this Italian olive oil company. And in my head, I'm thinking, there's no way in heck. You know what I wrote to her? Lynn, I think that's an awesome idea. Let me know how I may be of support. Well, she worked with our logistics, our legal services, our marketing pathway. And we now sell olive oil at kiosks across the Chicagoland area. And the school gets a portion of the funds for that. And Redoro, the olive oil company, pays for 2 or 3 kids every summer to do a full internship in Italy. because I didn't say no. Like,
Wow.
encourage people to dream, and it's amazing what they can do.
Yeah, it is encouraging them to dream, right? And also to be open to possibility. I think is what you just described. Be open to possibility. And so many things can emerge from that. So you talked about teacher voice in that, and giving teachers a lot more opportunity to be innovative and courageous in the way they're thinking and approaching the work. Also, just to some extent, you're talking about student voice as well. And I know both of us have seen times when we've really also unleashed their imaginations and curiosity around learning and what exciting things that they can do.
I don't think we use our students' voices enough to do a number of things, to lift up the work, but also to show the value of public education to our communities. We created a partnership with our local paper, and we had our journalism students write an article, and it showed up every Friday for 16 weeks on a different career cluster. Well, they did phenomenal work, right? They did phenomenal work, and they got something for a portfolio when they were applying to their 2 or 4 year institution that they're published already, Or we had a student who was doing an internship in our communications department, and it was on Veterans Day, so local news was going to come out and shoot a segment, and we're in Chicago, so stuff always happens. And the reporter called and said she could no longer make it, and we said to the student, "Go film the segment." So she went, she filmed the segment, came back, edited it down, sent it off to the news, and it played at 5, 6, and 10 o'clock. And a lot of places people would have said, "Oh, too bad." And we said, "No, our students are capable of this." And then when you go talk to business partners, I would always say these are not high school juniors or seniors. These are college sophomores or juniors, because of the amazing experience they've already had. We can provide a real strong return on investment. And so I just think if we unleash our students, it's amazing. I mean, look, you and I know this, Karen, right? Our students will rise or lower themselves to the expectations set by the adults. Set high expectations.
Well, and let them explore the things, provide opportunity for them to explore the things that they're passionate about. We know so many districts that we work with where students have patented, I'm talking about in high school. Yep. Young people have patented these ideas, really creative ideas that are going to help a lot of people because they had that idea, and the school district provided them the conditions to explore that and to study it and be curious about that. When I was a superintendent, we had a group of students that launched a satellite into space. First high school ever to do that. No teacher or administrator said, "Hey, y'all go figure out how to launch a satellite into space." No, these kids were curious about it, and they said, "You know what? We can do that. Let us try." Yeah, and lo and behold, they did. Yeah,
and I think the other thing that you talked about conditions, I think the conditions are important. We always gave all of our educators permission to fail forward. If something doesn't work, we call it version 1.0. And I always use the example of, remember the first cell phones and how big they were compared with, this baby right now.
Yes.
That wasn't the first version. Everything shouldn't work the first time you're trying something. And the Board of Education always gave me permission to fail forward, and I always gave that permission to our principals and our staff. And about every 3 years at our opening convocations, I would say that. I just want to remind you, you all have the ability to dream, innovate, and fail forward. And I think having that permission just does allow some fear and anxiety to be taken away from our educators who always worry about being perfect. And the reality is, you're not going to create perfection ever, but you've got to give yourself permission to do things better than you did them the day before.
Yeah, and I think that is at its core a lot of what we're trying to accomplish, I think, with this work and the work we're going to talk about next. And that is, lining ourselves up and providing our students, with our young people, with opportunities to learn the real skills that are going to be required for success in the workplace. And just recently, we had a panel of extraordinary leaders across these just really amazing fields of science, cyber, national security, biomedical, just all these fields that are dramatically emerging and changing. And the one message that came out of all of those is that we need young people who know how to fail and know how to, first of all, self-starters that are adaptable, because they said most of the most significant innovations have come out of a multitude of different little failures and learning from those failures and getting this big spark, this big idea. So, yeah, I feel like that's, this idea of iteration. We need to do more of that in our, not just one and done with grades, So let's talk a little bit about the Learning 2025 Commission and the report that came out of it. And full disclosure, Dave and I both were on the commission. And we're very proud to be a part of it. I was very proud to be a part of it. And because it's an AASA piece of work, I just wanted to ask you about how would you describe the purpose of that report and kind of what do you think is next for that, and what we were trying to accomplish, and what do you think you hope it drives?
Yeah, I think what we were hoping to accomplish was to lay out a blueprint for districts and states to at least be a thought partner as they're thinking about where education should head. Knowing that depending on that, context matters, right? And so depending on the community, depending on the state, you may be able to take pieces of Learning 2025 and move the work forward. Another place you may be able to take a lot more of Learning 2025. But we were really, at least I believe, my intent was to be create the conditions, to your point from earlier, for our students to be successful in an ever-changing global economy and provide an opportunity to ensure that we're creating graduates who are going to be able to earn an upwardly economically mobile salary to support a family over the course of a work life where the world is going to change multiple times. And at the same time, ensuring that we're being smart with our fiscal resources and that we're ensuring that we're providing access and opportunity for every child who walks through our doors. And I just love the phrase, no learner marginalized, because who wants to marginalize anybody, But we have to be thoughtful and intentional about the work and the opportunities that we're providing our students as we move forward.
I would also say, having been on the commission too, I think it was just trying to push thinking.
Yep.
Push thinking and push school leaders and others engaged in school systems to think differently about the traditional model of education. That we know the research is really clear on this. It's not just Karen's opinion or Dave's opinion. The research is really clear that our current model of education is not going to equip our young people with the skills, the experiences, the knowledge they need for success in the world that's very different than it was when we were in high school or we were in school. So I think to some extent it was trying to inspire people to step back and say, how does this need to be different?
Yeah, and I think, the example I use a lot is, if a student gets 1 to 11 wrong, why should they have to do 13 to 53? And likewise, if someone gets 1 to 11 right, why should they have to do 13 to 53? And we have the resource and the technology now to ensure that we're meeting every student in that proximal zone of development, that we should then, if we can create the instructional strategies to ensure that that's happening, it should accelerate everybody's learning, right? Mm-hmm. And that's why I love that whole concept that, when we spend a lot of time talking about the word choices we use, when we didn't talk about learning loss, we talked about learning accelerators. But the way you accelerate learning is to ensure that the instructional strategies are being presented to students within that zone of development. And then you can really take off from there. And I think, we had one of our, one of the best education thinkers in the country, Deb Delisle, former Assistant Secretary of Ed. And I remember her saying, why does a kid have to know they're being tested? Can't they be assessed while they're doing projects and doing other work? And if you have a child like I do, who experiences test anxiety, she's not demonstrating what she really knows. She's demonstrating what she can put on paper because she knows there's a test and she has test anxiety. So I think there are so many opportunities in today's world to push the thinking, to ensure that we're meeting every student where they're at and taking them to new, different, higher levels, that it would be really unfortunate if we didn't engage in the conversations at the local, state, and national level.
Yeah, I agree. And, I think the other thing that you're speaking of and what the report was kind of pushing is that the opportunity for authentic learning, right? Really meeting students where they are, but really providing them a multitude of different opportunities, whether that be different ways of thinking about how we're assessing learning versus just a traditional test score, which we know is not necessarily a true measure of what a child or a student knows, but really giving students that authentic, those authentic experiences, the ones they remember for their entire lives. You ask, some of those really powerful experiences in school, doing more of that, where you can ask, an adult, do you remember an experience you had in school? And you remember them because they had such an impact on your life. And then I think the other thing is really pushing people's thinking around broadening our definition of success to be more than just a test score.
But you talk about authentic learning, and the students do the similar projects with a different level of analysis over time, so in elementary, middle, and high school. So they're revisiting the same concept, but at a whole different level of understanding and learning. And those are, you just see the students light up when they talk about it. Or students in an education pathway program. Talk to high school students that have done field experiences at the elementary and middle school level and in special ed and high school EL, and they just beam, with everything that they've done in that class and how much they've studied and how much they worked and prepared. That's the stuff they're going to remember. And that's what we have to provide. The more authentic learning, real learning, work-based learning experiences we can provide. Just, we ran, third week on the job, still have to work on my tenses. But my former district, we ran a geometry and construction class. So our students who maybe didn't learn math the same way that everybody else learns math could do hands-on learning in a geometry and construction class. It's amazing that geometry and algebra concepts associated with robots and building robots or high mileage vehicles, and so providing opportunities that, one, they're going to remember, two, that are going to really excite them about learning. Those kids building robots and high mileage vehicles, they're the ones you have to kick out of the building at 10 o'clock at night because they don't want to go home. And I'll be honest, in some of the areas, it's safer for them to be at school than it would be for them to be at home from 4 o'clock till 10 o'clock. So we love it, and you want to see collaboration. You watch your robot fail in the first robot rumble, and you see them work together to get it back in the rink for that second time. That's stuff that people talk about, they love, that they're engaged, and it puts the love back in learning again, like we talked about at the very beginning. That's what it's about. Kids should love to learn. Adults should love to learn. Let's make sure that that's exactly the thought process we're thinking about as we're providing instructional strategies for our kids.